I think what surprised me most from a less emotive standpoint was how modest the Democratic gains in the House and the Senate were. I think they exceeded the initial expectations, perhaps, but all of the talk of getting closer to 60, I think, failed to materialize. It remains to be seen yet what happens in Oregon, I guess, and Minnesota. But if they do indeed lose Minnesota, they don't pick up Oregon. And of course, Ted Stevens, the convicted felon, winning in Alaska, and Democratic gains in the House of about 20 seats as opposed to 30. If this is supposed to be the Democratic landslide, it just didn't materialize, even though it seems the media reports it as a significant swing towards the Democrats in Congress.
I think that's right. The popular vote margin for the presidency also didn't seem to me that large. When you think about all the things that the Democrats had going in their favor, the state of the economy, the Bush approval ratings or disapproval ratings, I think a not very good campaign run by John McCain. This was a solid victory, but it wasn't a landslide.
What should be front and center in the next 100 days or so of the Obama administration when it begins in January, and what will be?
Well, we rightly pay a lot of attention to elections, but we've just been through an experience which is going to reorient public policy. And I think, looking back, some of the historians will be tempted to say that the decisive changes happened in October, not in November, and that this policy paradigm that has dominated our politics and government, but also the politics and government of many other countries, the market of the ideas of emphasizing the market of deregulation, etc., has run into this enormous problem of the crash, and it's going to prompt a great deal of rethinking about the direction of public policy. So in some ways, I think we have a president who's very well suited to that situation, somebody who's very bright, who obviously is prepared to talk with experts, to probe experts, to push them on what they really think. He's got a lot of support in Congress. He's got clear majorities, at least, in both chambers. I don't really worry too much from his point of view about the 60-vote margin. So I think that the way to look at it is that this is an incredible opportunity to reshape public policy. The existing paradigms have burned out. The president has got a lot of goodwill, and he's got good majorities in both chambers. I think that the problem with the financial crisis is who knows what it looks like at that point. I mean, one possibility is that basically the crisis part of it is over now, and that we are seeing markets recovering, things stabilizing, and that by the time he's sworn in on January the 20th, there is no need for crisis action. What is then the question is, what are the long-term implications in terms of re-regulation? In a funny way, one of the things that was often said during the election campaign was that Iraq, which was supposed to be the great issue, wasn't. It's entirely possible that by the time Senator Obama is sworn in as president, the financial crisis will also be the issue that isn't, although the long-term implications for regulatory and legal reform of company law might still be there.
You raised the issue of Iraq, and I was sort of thinking about that as well. The change in the Obama rhetoric on the war from the primaries, when the emphasis was on taking concrete steps to set timelines for withdrawal and to draw down the American commitment in Iraq, to the more nebulous and amorphous position that was taken during the general election as Iraq moves off the front burner. I wonder what his approach will be. I would imagine that it's going to be that if on any issue he's going to take sort of the approach he's taken throughout the campaign of sort of a more slow and deliberative policy-making approach, that it's going to be with Iraq, and that some on the left are going to be disappointed with the lack of any expeditious moves to begin drawing down the commitment there.
I wonder what the lessons of this election will be, not so much in the policy area that we've talked about, but in the political arena. I'm thinking that most candidates will be advised in the future to follow the Obama lead and don't take the campaign finance money. Of course, whether they can build his type of organization, we won't know. But that will be the new target, to build the same sort of network and mobilize it to the degree that Obama did and do without the public financing.
Well, I think what really makes this election unique is that you had one candidate that, because of his dearth of money in the primaries, was forced into taking public financing. Then you had another candidate who had an unbelievable ability to raise sums never before seen, which really created that disparity that allowed Obama to play offense in red states that he had no business playing in, like North Carolina, which he may end up winning, and even in the last days of the campaign, taking it to Arizona. And so, I think there will be an even more, premium placed on money early in the process. I think both parties are going to try and take steps to make sure that their candidate does not have to take public money in the general election campaign because of the disadvantage that it places them at, and sort of contemporary experience coupled with a Supreme Court that's striking down not sort of increased public financing or limits on campaign expenditures, but just sort of the much more modest restrictions on campaign finance in BICRA with the Wisconsin right to elect decision, means that even if there was a political impetus for reform coming out of this election, which I don't think there is, that there is not a Supreme Court that would be willing to uphold it anyway. So I think that, to me, campaign finance reform is dead. And we're going to see an increased role, not necessarily that money buys elections, but an increased amount of money that's going to be a permanent feature of subsequent campaigns. Has Obama fundamentally reshaped the map? Has blue crept permanently sort of, through the upper Midwest, into Indiana and Iowa, creeping down, and then creeping a little bit southern, breaking the solid South with Virginia and North Carolina, and then Democratic gains in the West? Or are these temporary, ephemeral, manifestations of a weird election season that really should have tilted unbelievably Democratic?
Well, I think that the answer to that is probably dependent on the particular state, and I think that the demographic changes in Virginia, for example, should continue to strengthen the Democrats. I don't think any Democrat would be wise to count on Indiana in the future. I think, just to return briefly to that point about mobilization, one of the questions also now will be, what advantage can Obama take of that mobilization in government? Is that a potential resource for trying to push through some major legislation, arguably healthcare? Are those 3 million people who can be used to maintain a support organization and, in a way, act as a supporting interest group on something like a healthcare proposal if he goes that way?